Well, guys, when your name is the one thing everyone's talking about in a football week, it either means you've had an absolutely amazing night or you've had an absolutely catastrophic night. We will, of course, talk about it in a bit, but let's just do a quick little, very rapid rundown of the FA Cup, the Champions League, and then we'll start talking, and even the Championship, and then we'll start talking about the stories later on. So we started off when it came to the FA Cup. Wolverhampton Wanderers against Liverpool. It was a repeat of the Tuesday match that Liverpool lost. Wolverhampton Wanderers didn't get a second one in a row. Liverpool through to the quarterfinals of the round of 16, of the FA Cup. Impressive for them. We also had some championship matches, but we're not going to focus on the championship matches because we had 2 rounds of it. But we will focus on the table in a little bit. We then had on the Saturday, Mansfield Town giving Arsenal a really good go. Didn't get the win, unfortunately. Arsenal went through. Wrexham as well against Chelsea. Wrexham really were actually the better team. Chelsea just about got away with it. And Newcastle United against Manchester City, it was kind of a bit more easier for Manchester City. By the way, the one takeaway probably from this, Chelsea are lucky, and Wrexham could be quite fun to see in the Premier League next year if they get promoted. Then we moved on to Sunday, and we had the shocks. Leeds United against Norwich City. Leeds United winning is not a shock, but Port Vale and Southampton going through at the expense of Sunderland and Fulham, huge shocks. Port Vale, bottom of the 3rd tier. They're through to the round of 16 or quarterfinals. Can't remember. I think it's quarterfinals, isn't it? Can't remember. Anyways, then we moved on to Monday, and we had West Ham United versus Brentford. Brentford had the chance to win this with a penalty, and then lost out on penalties. Kind of not surprising, to be quite honest. And then we had Champions League matches. There was some big matches that were going on. We are into the last 16, so this is all about who can get into the quarterfinals. Liverpool losing to Galatasaray, a little bit of a surprise. Bayern Munich beating Atalanta, not a surprise really. One of the best team, the best team in Germany versus like the 4th best team in Italy, was kind of expected on that. Atletico Madrid against Tottenham Hotspur was a trouncing. We will talk about the main character of that a little bit later on. And Newcastle United against Barcelona. Newcastle might be a bit disappointed they didn't get the win against Barcelona. So, one of those. Then on the Wednesday, we had Bayer Leverkusen versus Arsenal. Arsenal were actually lucky to get a draw. Bodo Glimt, 3-0 winners over Sporting. This tiny little team up in Norway could be into the quarterfinals of the Champions League. Watch this space, guys. PSG versus Chelsea, that was a trouncing, and Real Madrid against Manchester City. That was a trouncing. We'll talk about English teams' performance in the Champions League in a little bit. But just before that, we'll just go on to the tables, the Championship, because like I said, we had 2 rounds of fixtures. At the top, Coventry City now have a 9-point gap to the team in 3rd. We need to get to the top 2 to be promoted. There's 9 games to go. Not that long to go. Coventry City have really got a gap. But between Millwall and Middlesbrough have lost a little bit of ground, and Millwall really could, as they're the other team in form, get into 2nd place into the automatic promotion. That could be really exciting. As is the battle for 6th place, the final position of the playoffs for this year. Southampton are closing ground on Wrexham. And I would say so at Derby County, but they kind of got the same results as Wrexham. But Southampton absolutely could end up in the promotion playoffs by the end of the season, the way that they are performing. And there's other teams to keep an eye out for as well. Birmingham City won their last match. Swansea City won their last 2 matches. Further down, not really as much. I mean, Norwich City have won 3 matches in a row, but it would be a big shock if they caught up those 9 points to Wrexham. So yeah. And then in regards to the relegation races, I mean, Sheffield Wednesday, we know they're out. In terms of everywhere else, Oxford and Leicester both got some good wins, so they are starting to climb their way out of it. It's the bottom 3 that get relegated. Bit worrying for West Bromwich Albion. but also worrying signs for Blackburn and for Portsmouth. Teams that used to be in the Premier League about 10, 15 years ago could end up in League One again. A little bit surprising, but this is getting to be quite an exciting little storyline that's coming on. Keep an eye out for Championship matches. Now, Champions League. We got to talk about him. Anthony Kinsky. People are still talking about him 2 days later, and it's not for great reasons, let's be honest. How can I defend him? Actually, before I defend him, let's just talk about what happened. Atletico Madrid versus Tottenham Hotspur. And in 16 minutes, the first 16 minutes of the match, Tottenham Hotspur conceded 3 goals. Not a great night for any goalkeeper in that circumstances on its own. But here's the thing. This is where you end up with one gut punch after another. Mentally, this guy was winded at the end of this night. Because it's not just the fact that he conceded 3 goals. That's a bad enough night for any goalkeeper. It's the fact that he slipped for 2 of those goals. Now, the slipping means that you can make excuses for him because maybe it's the ground that he was on, the boots that he was given to wear, I don't know, but, there's excuses there. But as a goalkeeper, it still ain't a great feeling. That's still a gut punch feeling. That's gut punch number 2. Struggling to breathe right now. By the way, bear in mind, the guy's 22 years old. In goalkeeper years, that's being a baby. That's the equivalent of like an 18-year-old striker is a 22-year-old goalkeeper because their development ends up a bit further. That's why you end up with older goalkeepers a lot of the time. Ones in their late 30s and 40s still playing because really they develop a little bit later because it is more of a mental game than it is about a physical game. So that's gut punch number 2 and the fact that he's 22 years old. Then, to Tottenham's credit, and Igor Tudor's a little bit of credit, they subbed him off to save his face. He was beaten, basically. There was a point where he had his head down. It was almost like he just wanted out of there. So fair enough. But then came gut punch number 3. Because, let's be honest, when you're having a bad day, you need the support. So when Anthony Kinsky was substituted off, who was there to support him? Who was there to look after him? Who was there to give him arm around the shoulder? A little talking to, don't worry, mate, it was a bad day. Don't worry about it. No one. Igor Tudor didn't even give him any attention. Brought Vicario back onto the pitch and just, it's like, yeah, you could tell that Igor Tudor was more focused on wanting to save his face in the match than look after Anthony Kinsky. And here's the thing. I want to actually give an apology of my own. In fact, 2 apologies of my own. Apology number 1. After seeing him last year in the League Cup semi-final against Liverpool, and I believe it was at Tottenham Hotspur, I thought Kinsky was a decent goalkeeper. Really decent goalkeeper. He showed promise. He was brought in straight away. He put in a solid performance that basically meant that Liverpool had to win their second match because they were losing by the first match. He did well in his first ever match for Tottenham Hotspur. Really, really well. So it's kind of a surprise to me to see him struggle in this match. But let's face it, Atletico Madrid, it's a cauldron, it's a nightmare. So fair enough. But apology number 2 is this. I don't mind admitting to the fact that I actually thought Igor Tudor would be a good interim appointment for Spurs. He had this steel about him, that sort of thing you need in I wouldn't say an underdog, but like a sort of a little brother um, energy in teams, which is this sort of steel. This you can't tell us what to do. We're just as good. It's the reason why managers like David Moyes has done so well at Everton. Sean Dyche has done so well, right? It's this. Don't you dare think you're better than us. And Igor Tudor had this same energy. I was like, this could be exactly what Tottenham need. I remember feeling that way of like, you need someone to basically go, hold on, we're here too, right? Unfortunately, I didn't realise he was going to show that same steely, cold-hearted spirit to his own team. It's toxic. Igor Tudor is a toxic manager. This has completely killed Igor Tudor's career, and it's entirely his fault because he has shown no kindness, no comfort, no anything to his team. The fact that people are talking about Slaven Bilic as being warm compared to Igor Tudor is wild. And his toxic attitude has now damaged the career of an up-and-coming goalkeeper. Because here's the thing, Kinsky is toxic in another area. Not toxic in terms of he's a bad guy. Not toxic in terms he has a bad attitude. But toxic in terms of he's going to have that night on his mind for a while. What team would be willing to take a shot on him? To buy him from Tottenham Hotspur? When would Tottenham Hotspur ever play him again? In a sense, that night has potentially pushed Kinsky to the bench when he wants to play more than anything else. I can say this even as an amateur goalkeeper. There is no better feeling than being the goalkeeper. Being the main guy. Being the one that is holding the fort for your team. Letting them go and do their attacking whilst you defend for your life to keep a clean sheet. It's an awesome feeling. And having a night that is so bad that it basically means you almost are never going to play again, worst feeling in the world. Because I don't know whether his career's over, but in Kinsky's mind, he might be feeling it is over for him. And there's a certain name that's been going around of another goalkeeper with a Champions League night that was as bad as Kinsky's. Somehow worse, somehow not as bad. This guy. Now, given the team that I support, I probably am quite well qualified to talk about this guy. For those of you guys that don't know, it's Loris Karius, German goalkeeper. He was good young player, playing a lot of young academies, and at the age of 24, such a young age, he was that good and promising that he made an appearance in a Champions League final for Liverpool. Unfortunately for him, he then made some quite bad errors. Errors on a similar level to Kinsky's. Some might argue worse, some might argue better, but it's certainly, in terms of an effect on him, a similar sort of night. Now, Kinsky could go down the tunnel so that he could be emotional. Karius had to be on the pitch being emotional because he started to collect medals, and you saw tears in his eyes. It really had a bad effect on him. And I want to really show you, the best way of showing you just how big of an effect it had on Loris Karius' career is by showing you his Wikipedia more than anything else, which is here, right? And just looking at the teams that he played for. So from 2011 to 2016, he was up and coming in the German leagues with Mainz. He was showing himself to be a good young goalkeeper, right? I mean, 2016 from June 1993. So he was becoming this up and coming goalkeeper, a goalkeeper that signed for Liverpool at the age of 23. 23. He was, like I say, 24 in his Champions League final. This was, up until that match, he was looking like he was going to be that guy. This new German goalkeeper that everyone was looking forward to. And then, after that Champions League final, that awful Champions League final, he played in a friendly against Tranmere Rovers, a team that is now in the 4th tier, and I think they were still in the 4th tier at that time, and he conceded goals against them. And some people looked at him and it was like, something's not quite right here. Against a 4th tier team in England. He went on loan to Besiktas, but it wasn't that great. He played 55 times over 2 years. In terms of appearances, not too bad, but wasn't that confident. Went to Union Berlin for a year. Only played 4 times. Went to Newcastle United. Only played once. Mind you, that was in a League Cup final. And I do remember this, and Tottenham fans will probably start getting this same feeling when it comes to Kinsky over the next few years, is that I remember being this sort of advocate for Karius over those years. I was like, watching any game that he took part in, wanting him to do well, just wanting him to have that glimmer of a great night. And for Newcastle United, he played a League Cup final against Manchester United under weird circumstances. The first choice goalkeeper for Newcastle was injured. Their second choice goalkeeper had played for Manchester United the first half of the season on loan. And because of the way the cup competition works, the second goalkeeper couldn't play for Newcastle. So Karius was the only option that could play for Newcastle. In fact, I remember there were some people joking that a guy called Shay Given, who was 40 plus at the time, would come out of retirement to play for them. It was kind of like a bit of a joke thing. And Newcastle, I mean, he didn't do anything bad in that Newcastle game, but not anything special that would have resurrected his career and made people go, oh my God, this guy is amazing. And here's the thing. He then spent about 6 months to a year without a club as a free agent. Does he have a redemption arc? Yes, he does. He's about to get promoted to the German first tier with Schalke with a really good defensive record this year. This year is where he's finally making some sort of recovery and redemption. 8 years, 7 to 8 years after that Champions League night. That's how bad it can ruin a goalkeeper's career. Because Karius at that time was toxic. Again, not a bad attitude, not bad behaviour, just he had that emotional scar, and who can touch him? And now he's finally coming back. Now, maybe it won't be as sudden as it is for Kinsky. Maybe it won't be as bad for Kinsky as it is for Karius, but that is sort of the thing we're talking about here. And if I was Kinsky, I'd be like going, yeah, get me a loan out to my home country. Is it Czech Republic? I think it is. Just get me out, right? That's how it is. That is where we are currently at. But anyway, it's not just about Tottenham Hotspur, because all of the Premier League teams had a bad night in the Champions League. No one won. Newcastle drew. Arsenal drew. Liverpool got away with a 1-0 loss. And the other 3 teams in Manchester City, Chelsea and Tottenham all lost by 3 goals. Now let's talk about this. Is it a case of this is it? It's oblivion time for the Premier League? No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. But why have we got this situation? Well, firstly, let's just say a little bit of caution when it comes to this. Little bit of caution, because there's one important thing here. Liverpool played away. Tottenham Hotspur played away. Arsenal played away. Chelsea played away. Manchester City played away. There's a reason why they all played away. It's because they ended up in the top 8 of the Champions League table. And why is that such a big thing to talk about? Because playing at home has that advantage. We saw it a few years ago where we had comeback after comeback in the home game. You know, all it takes is the atmosphere to be electric. Like, most Arsenal, Chelsea, Manchester City, Liverpool and Tottenham, well, maybe not Tottenham fans, but Liverpool fans, they'll be looking at the next match, which is next week, I believe. And they will be going, right, we are going to make this stadium hell for the opposition. We're going to boo every opposition player. We're going to cheer for everything, cheer every pass. We're going to shout at the players. We're going to give them stick. We're going to shout insults at them. Not to the point where it's abuse, but we're just going to shout insults at them. Make them feel like the smallest players in the world. And at the same time, make our players feel like the best players in the world. And so all of these are potentially recoverable. All of them have got this sort of history. Now, Newcastle is a little bit different. They've got to actually win, and they've got to win at Barcelona. Not great. But there is that to consider. This is not the entirety of the week. But let's say that all 6 teams do go out. 5 teams, sorry. No, 6 teams. Let's say all 6 teams do go out of the Champions League. Why? Well, here's the thing. This is not the first time we've come across this. I remember a time when it was in the late 2000s. Chelsea and Manchester United were considered 2 of the best teams in the world. They only made it to 1 Champions League final. Maybe 2. There's a few years where it was like, you know, Jose Mourinho's Chelsea, Alex Ferguson's Man United, so good. In fact, let's talk about Alex Ferguson's Man United. Was it 1 or 2 Champions Leagues they won, right? Over 20 years. You talk about the time of Arsene Wenger at Arsenal. Never won a Champions League. And remember the time when Liverpool and Manchester City were going toe-to-toe? For 4 or 5 years, they were the best. The Jurgen Klopp and Pep Guardiola years. 1 Champions League each. It's not all about who is the best team. Now, to some teams, it's about the aura of the Champions League. The teams that have won the most, Real Madrid, AC Milan, I'm thankful that Liverpool are one of them. There's that aura of inevitability sometimes about it, where it just feels like it's going to happen, and they just break through something, right? For Real Madrid, there's been so many times where they've had really dodgy, poor runs to a Champions League final and winning it. Liverpool in 2005. They weren't even the best team in their own country. But the aura of the Champions League kept them going. To the point where it was like an aura fest between them and Milan, and I still don't know how Liverpool did it, right? So when it comes to Real Madrid, there's going to be inevitability about it. PSG, last year's winner, there's going to be an aura inevitability. I know Chelsea won the Club World Cup, but PSG are going to feel like they're the better team. And they've probably got the bit between their teeth because of what Chelsea did last year to them in winning the Club World Cup in the first place. So there is that to consider as well. This is another type of level. But the biggest thing that really why I was mentioning about the Jurgen Klopp and Pep Guardiola era only winning one Champions League each, Alex Ferguson only winning 2 Champions Leagues in 20 years, all that sort of thing, is because the Premier League being as competitive as it is exactly the reason why the Champions League is so hard for them to win. Because you see, here's the thing. You still got to play matches, right? The one thing that links me and Lionel Messi together is that after a certain amount of playing, we will get tired, we will get exhausted, mentally drained, physically drained. Now, Lionel Messi's levels might be further than mine, but there's still going to be a limit to the stamina and endurance that Lionel Messi's going to have, right? And if you are playing harder matches in between time, you're going to struggle. Put Sunderland in the Italian league or the Spanish league. I can guarantee you they will easily get top 5. Easily get a chance of getting the Champions League. Fighting on all fronts. That's just how it is. And so what does that mean? It means that the big teams in other countries can rest their players for their matches. I mentioned Bodo Glimt versus Sporting. Here's another great example of this. Bodo Glimt aren't even playing competitive matches at the moment. Because of how far north they are, the Norwegian league doesn't start, I think, until, is it next month? So they've got fresh players. This is a fun day for them, basically. That's just how it is. And if we were looking at it in terms of, let's say, the Chelsea-Wrexham match, because Chelsea did actually rest some players for the Wrexham game, and they had to basically bring them on late. If Chelsea played the equivalent of a mid-table, second-tier team in Spain, I feel like it'd be a whitewash for Chelsea. And that's the difference. Against lesser opposition in the same league, teams like Real Madrid and Barcelona can rest players, can take gambles, because their second team could probably still beat the bottom teams of their league. As could the English team's second team could probably beat the bottom bottom teams of the league, those leagues. It's a little bit easier. Every game is almost like an FA Cup 4th round against a small opposition. That's just how it is. And that's the situation. Now, yes, they might be playing exactly the same amount of matches, but that still does have an impact. Let's add something else. A lot of countries have a winter break in January and February. Can you remember when the Premier League had a break? And I mean a proper break. I don't mean an international break, because an international break, the players are still playing, right? I mean a proper break. It was probably in July. And whilst I'm not talking about physical limitations, I'm talking about mental limitations now. It's just like, ugh, another one. Ugh, another one. That's just how it is. So let's not jump to too many conclusions on the Champions League because, like I say, we've got another week of this. I suspect that Liverpool and Arsenal will just about survive and go through. I suspect that Newcastle could do it 50-50. And I wouldn't be surprised if one of Manchester City and Chelsea overturn it and get a second, get like a 3-0, 4-0 victory on the other half. Be interesting to see. But yeah, just hold on the criticism because, like I say, it's just that situation of it's less exhausting. But we'll see. The Champions League, we're coming up to the quarterfinals, so it's still going to be exciting times. Really going to be fascinating times. So yeah, that's just how it's going to be. We got further matches coming up this weekend. Premier League matches, of course. Championship matches, of course. And then probably by next week we'll know who is through in the Champions League as well. But until next time, guys, feel free to like, subscribe, put comments down. You know the drill. And until next time, guys, take care.